Hey, everybody. This is Christopher Talon, your host of Creative Ops, a podcast for creative people by creative people. And today I was really excited. I got to interview two guys who've had me on their podcast twice. One of them is my producer, Jason Tieri. Say hi, Jason.
Hi, Jason. Oh, hi, everybody.
And then his partner in crime is Ben Kraker. We were all together today, not in studio because of obviously the coronavirus scare. We're practicing our social distancing, and Jason's holding down the studio, and Ben and I tuned in remotely with our computers. So if you're wondering why the audio doesn't sound perfect and crisp like it did in the first episode, it's because I'm at home on my computer. Yeah, in these strange and weird times, we're keeping the podcast going as best we can. Jason doing the same with all his plethora of podcasts that he's involved with. This podcast, it's just for people that are into podcasts, whether you want to start one or not. This is how the sausage gets made. So I hope you enjoy it. I had fun talking with you, Jason, and Ben. Hopefully you guys were able to suffer through me okay.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I enjoy it, and I love talking about podcasting. So
yeah, and it shows. This was a long one today, at least by my standards. So yeah, enjoy that background music. You're welcome. I did all that, so that's my claim to being a creative person. Jason does like 50 podcasts. That's his claim, amongst other things.
Yeah, so, just real quick, I love that song, Chris. It's very catchy. When I'm editing and screwing around with it for the next 3 hours, that jingle. Like, I can't think of it now, but that jingle at the beginning before you start singing is ingrained in my head. So whatever you did a good job.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I tried. Back when I used to actually have the time to do stuff like that. Yeah, so enjoy the song, enjoy the podcast, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome to Creative Ops, a podcast for creative people by creative people. I'm joined by Jason Tieri and Ben Kraker of multiple podcasts. Hey, fellas.
Hello.
It's Crocker.
I figured Jason would correct you.
Oh, well.
No, start again.
That's fine. We'll just keep going. Because I've now said both of your guys' last names incorrectly to other people and to your faces. So now we're all on even footing. Got to get that stupid thing up there. There we go. So guys, I wanted to talk to you guys because this is a podcast, so I can learn a lot from you guys by asking these questions. But I also want to put out there for people that are thinking like, oh man, I kind of want to start a podcast. There's a lot more that goes into it than I was aware of. Before we get into all of that, I just kind of want to know, how did you guys each individually get interested in podcasts and then podcasting? Ben, can you go first?
All right. Well, I initially got introduced to the world of podcasting by listening. I was an avid listener, have been for many years, but if there's one memory that sticks out about listening to podcasts, it would be moving from Oregon to Michigan and driving a big yellow Penske truck full of our earthly belongings, and it can get pretty boring behind the wheel, and It's a long drive, so I tuned into a bunch of NPR podcasts, and that's kind of what stands out as like the first time that I fully engaged in podcasting and listening, at least. And and as far as creating content for a podcast, it was when I met Jason that that's kind of the basis for our relationship getting started in the first place, our friendship. It began around the GR Rideshare Adventures podcast. He was starting one and about rideshare driving and needed some additional guests to keep it moving. So I saw his post on Facebook and I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm open.
Oh, so you guys didn't know each other really at all before that?
Nope.
Nope.
And I showed up to his house and we
You say that again, Ben, you cut out.
Yeah, you dropped out just for a second.
I said we the first time I met Jason, we met at his house and went in his basement and recorded.
I promise I didn't touch him.
Well, yeah, you didn't have the audio or sorry, not the video from those days probably then either, did you?
Nope. We just
audio,
just USB mic, and I think the first one I was by myself. The second one, I think there was one mic in the room, and we shared. We shared.
Did you guys like both kind of like saddle up next to it, or did you actually like pass it back and forth?
Oh no, we just cuddled up real close to that microphone.
Yeah, that was a big leap for Ben, especially not knowing me and then just posting it on Facebook. Coming into my house and in my basement.
Does anybody want to play with my toys in my basement with me? Well, how about you, Jason? What got you into podcasts, and then what was the moment where you're like, I want to do this?
Yeah, I've been listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, like I'm sure everyone says, for years and years and years. I don't even know initially how I got started on podcasts, but I as you guys know, I work by myself in the summer doing lawn fertilization. So, gosh, I mean, you can only listen to the same 100 songs, or Pandora or Spotify or whatever. I don't even think Spotify was around when I started listening to podcasts. But so I was like, I need more in my life. And so, yeah, I just started listening to podcasts. And it was Joe Rogan. It was Free Beer and Hot Wings back in the day when Zane was there. I definitely listened to that one, too. But then I just be like, man, I would love to have my own podcast because I love to talk. I found myself listening to podcasts and like talking back to them. Excuse me. And what's really cool about podcasts, which I was drawn to, you feel like you know them. Like if I had seen Joe Rogan in the street, I would know everything about him, and you'd like run up to him and shake his hand and not be like a super fan, be like, oh man, that story about such and such. You just feel like you know them as people. And I mean, he podcasts for 3 hours at a time. So, but yeah, it slowly just trickled into, as Ben knows probably more than you, Chris, is I love hobbies. I mean, I've been a beekeeper. I've played the drums. This is probably the longest I've ever gone with something as far as a hobby. I'm pretty proud of myself, honestly. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and then we kind of went from there. That was what, Ben? That would probably be January of 2018 when him and I kind of started doing it.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Well, then I must have jumped in on the Threads bandwagon fairly early on because GR Rideshare was January 2018. When did Threads begin?
June of 2018.
Okay.
So we did about 5 months, and then we were just kind of like, it'd be fun to start something else. That was Jason's great idea.
I'm glad. I'm super glad we did. I would love to start more, but it's just, I got a lot of time now, but it's a big commitment. One nice thing about helping Chris out, like he takes care of all the posting and all that stuff. I just send him the file, and that's been pretty nice to do that. Here you go. You put it up when you want to put it up.
Right.
Yeah. I try to relieve as much burden as I can because I know your wife probably doesn't want you doing any more for other people's shows than you have to.
Well, a sidebar on that, I am looking for a studio to expand the business of production.
Really?
Yeah, I'm looking for a space, not a studio that's specific for podcasting, but an actual space that I can rent on a monthly basis that I can say, all right, meet me at the studio at 9 p.m. and we'll record and do it from there. That way, because, Megan doesn't want people coming down in the house, which I get it. Like, I'm at my limit of who she's going to allow more people into the house. So
having to warn every guest about the short stairs.
First world problems.
Right.
We've only had one guest fall.
Yeah.
Oh, was it Was it bad, or was it just kind of like, oops?
It was oops, and I think they were just awkward, because
Yeah.
like it's someone else's house and you wipe out. So
Yeah. I want to ask you who it was, but we can talk about that later.
yeah,
Yeah. Just to kind of answer my own question, I think I probably got into podcasting from Joe Rogan, also is probably the first podcast I listened to regularly, but I started listening to it on YouTube.
oh wow,
And then yeah, and I would kind of do dishes, fold laundry, and with the like at the computer in front of me or something while the kids were doing something on a tablet. But yeah, then I got into the world of actually looking for podcasts at podcast places, and I was like, whoa, there's like 18 podcasts for everything you could possibly ever think of.
Yep.
so true.
Which leads me to my next question. How did you, besides knowing you wanted to do podcasts, because, well, first, I guess I should say, too, to the people that don't already know, you guys had the GR Rideshare Adventures podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
That started it all. Then you guys did Threads podcast, Life Unfiltered. Then Ben, you've got, is it The Root of All Ben?
It is, and it is the root
Ben.
of all nothing right now. I haven't recorded many episodes lately, but given current circumstances, I probably will pick that back up.
Yeah. So that's 3 shows that you guys are on, and then Jason also produces 2 others. So 5 shows between all of the 2 of you collectively. When you were sitting down to say, okay, I want to do a podcast, was that first one, was it pretty easy to go, oh, rideshare, yeah? Or did you go, okay, I've got to write some ideas down, think about this, and figure out what's actually going to be good to do week after week?
That's a good question. Our thought between Ben and I, Ben surprisingly would rather just hit record instead of planning something out. And he's really good on his feet. I'm a good, when people are talking, like jumping in and giving my, 2 cents or whatever. But Ben's really good at just being like having these thoughtful answers. But I think rideshare was just passionate for both of us, and we really enjoyed doing it. And there was never not a lot to talk about except this Wednesday. Well, I don't know if this is coming out, but we're low on content because there's not much rideshare going on. But we're just gonna do it anyways and see what happens. But yeah, I think I don't think as for me that there wasn't. It was really easy to come up with content, and we kind of planned it out. And it's kind of grown in a way, but now it's pretty easy. We just throw stuff in what we need to and just hit record. So
yeah. So then Threads was kind of born out of the GR Rideshare. You guys became close, said, okay, we want to do another one that's a little bit more personal. Was that where you were kind of going with that, or did you just know you wanted to do another one and you shot ideas back and forth till something stuck?
Yeah. So as we were doing the GR Rideshare podcast, Jason and I just started noticing that we clicked on a number of levels beyond just rideshare driving. We were both passionate about being the best dads we could be. We were both passionate about just living life honestly and not holding up this false image that we so often see on Facebook and whatnot. So we met at Graydon's Crossing, which is a local bar here in town, one of my favorites, and had dinner. And Jason's like, we should do another podcast. And so I was like, okay, well, what's it going to be about? And I think his answer was life. I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty specific. So we just proceeded to just kind of drill down, what does this look like? What's our goal? What's the objective?
Yeah.
And from that dinner meeting is initially where we kind of hashed out the framework for what we wanted it to be about.
So to go on that, if anyone's listening and wants to start a podcast, I would encourage you to find. I always either say everyone it's tomato or tomato, but niche or niche before you create your podcast. Now, I'm not saying Threads doesn't have that, but it is kind of broad, and it is tough to market a little bit in regards to. Whoa, Jason, turn your frickin' phone off. What am I, a rookie, part timer?
Right.
Yeah, it's tough to, the ride share is easy, right? It's got its niche, I know where to go. I know where to, advertise to people. I know where to, what groups to share it in on Facebook. But with like Threads, it's like, do we share it in dad groups? Do we share it in adopted family groups? Because Ben has adopted kids. Like, it's just kind of hard where to go with it. So my only advice is to really think about it. What you want to do and what you're passionate about. I mean, if you're passionate about honeybees, then yeah, that's super niche, and you're gonna, be able to distribute that well and gain a big following. So that's my only thought on that.
Well, I want to piggyback on that a little bit too. I was thinking about the. You're gonna have to tell me the woman's name. Andy's mom.
Yeah, Marcy.
Mom? Marcy. Yeah. Passion can mean a lot of things too, because Marcy, for anyone who hasn't listened to that episode of Threads podcast Live Unfiltered, which you should, Marcy lost her son and was trying to find more or less kind of like a place to like share her grief, I guess, with the community. Didn't see anything online and was like, well, I'll start a podcast there. So like, I mean, it's kind of weird to say like, try to jump in and find a good market in and like, combine it with the awful experience that she had. But like, that is a good example of, find something that, whether it's something that you love or it's something that, is passionate in kind of a different way. And you can make that work.
You kind of got to look at what your goal is. If you just want to record and you don't want to, I mean, if you're not looking to grow it or, you're just looking for an outlet, it doesn't really matter. You just do what you want to do. But if you want to grow it, to make it become something, I mean, of course, Ben and I would love if it blew up and like we could quit our jobs.
Right.
You know what I mean? That would be super sweet. I love podcasting. It's super fun. But so I guess I should throw that out there. If you're not looking to, if you're not worried about numbers or you're not looking to grow, then do whatever you want. But if you are going to, make sure you really think about it before you create. Like Chris, him and I went through like the logos and the name and the tagline. Like that's all super important because once you start growing it, and then it's tough to change. It's doable, but it's tough to change once you have like 50 episodes in.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I want to backtrack just a little bit because this is something I do with all my guests so far. Before we get into the meat of what it is that you do now, I kind of want to go back and talk about, I like to ask people, what were you like when you were a student in like middle school, high school? So Ben, I'm kind of curious, what kind of guy were you in high school? What kind of group did you run with? Or, how would you have described 18-year-old, 17-year-old Ben?
Yeah. Let's see. High school was, I think back to movies like The Breakfast Club. And as I, try to figure out who I was, that movie comes to mind. I was kind of one of each of those people. I had friends that were the super nerdy type. I had friends that were the super preppy type. I had friends that were kind of on the fringe of the school. So in high school, I for sure was kind of all of the above and kind of just had friends of all different social backgrounds and popularity levels and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I would call myself a social drifter in high school. In middle school, though, it was very different. I was very much the loner or outcast almost. I went to a small Christian middle school, and my experience was not great there. It's something that we've unpacked on some early episodes of Threads, but it was not great. So After middle school was just such a shit show, I was so excited about starting over in a public high school, and very much took advantage of the multiple different types of people that were now part of the school, and not just the rich preppy white kids that were at the Christian school. So yeah, I definitely loved that aspect of high school, just the variety of people that I was able to hang out with.
Yeah. Nothing against rich, preppy white people. There's a lot of nice, rich, preppy white people. But yeah, it's kind of nice to have some diversity too. Yeah.
Yes, but the kids were just at the Christian middle school. They were just vicious. Like
Really?
I was not. I was out of place there. I came from a working middle class home.
Mm-hmm.
My parents really sacrificed and struggled to send me to that Christian school, and I just didn't fit. I was not your typical preppy kid.
Well, let me ask you, because you sound like somebody who probably was fairly emotionally mature for your age back then. Did you feel the burden of your parents like working really hard to send you there on top of everything else?
Not not in the moment, no. I did
Okay.
not really have an awareness of that until probably late high school is when
Yeah.
I kind of started picking up on things.
Okay. I'm just curious if that added to the anxiety, or if it was just all what happened once you got there.
Yeah, it was just very much the experience. I didn't have much knowledge of, the pieces of what my parents were going through, what my parents were going through to even send me there.
Yeah. Yeah. Middle school, if I hadn't been in a band, then I probably would have hated I hated middle school anyway, but like we were in a band, so we used to play at the dances, and people would come up to you afterwards, and girls would be like, "Oh, I saw you playing the drums." So that was kind of my in middle school, but otherwise I didn't like it very much either. How about you, Jason? What were you like middle school, high school?
Yeah, and if obviously you haven't listened to Threads, the people are listening to this, but I don't have a lot of memory of my childhood. I grew up pretty shitty, so
Yeah.
I blocked a lot of that out. But yeah, growing up, I grew up in a Christian home, and supposedly a Christian home, and went to Christian school and Christian high school and everything. I didn't have that same experience. I actually hung out surprisingly with a lot of girls. Most of my friends were girls. I still on even at today, I'd much rather have friends that are girls. I don't know why. Not that I'm trying. It wasn't like a sexual thing. Like I wasn't trying to pick them up. I mean, there was a few I was trying to, but
Well,
but
right.
that's just normal. But yeah, I definitely just communicated better with girls, which is weird. I don't know, because my mom was my abuser, and I've struggled with relationship with women my whole life, so I'm not sure why I was drawn to girls. Maybe that's just all I knew, but maybe I was trying to seek out the healthy relationship of the female. But no, high school was okay. I mean, like I said, I kind of hung out with girls, played sports. I was like in this middle, or in this in between of like I was kind of a jock, but I kind of wasn't, because in my school there was no football. So if you played basketball, you were the number one, and I didn't play basketball, but like a lot of the basketball players ran track with me, and I could beat them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice. And then my sophomore year, but swimming was introduced to Unity Christian, and it was a co-ed team. And so I swam for my sophomore, junior, and senior year. So I missed the competition. I'm super out of shape now, but for you guys, maybe you would never believe this, but I was like 165 pounds and like ripped, and now I have a huge face, and I'm a big boy because I like food. But no, it was okay. I don't have a lot of memory of it, yeah, that's about it.
What about Ben? And then I'll ask you again, Jason. Grades wise, were you solid performer? Did you kind of struggle? Were you just kind of average student?
Middle school, I don't think I was super Well, because I had so much other stuff going on in the background, grades kind of didn't matter so much to me. So I was
Right.
probably an average student in middle school, but then in high school, definitely had a good experience grades wise. I took AP Psych in my senior year,
Mm.
but senior skip day happened to also fall on AP test day. So even after taking the entire AP class, I was dumb enough to skip class on the AP test day.
You know what the funny part is? It doesn't even matter now. No one gives a shit. Like,
It's true.
Yeah.
But
If
I
you
could
tell
have
people
gone
you took
in
an
with
AP in high school, they're like, I don't care.
yeah. I could have gone into college with a couple of credits under my belt, but I
Maybe.
didn't want to take the test. So skipping school on senior skip day was more important to me.
Yeah. Well, I've heard, and getting a little off topic, but that's fine. I've heard people say that they took APs, and then when they got to college, they're like, nope, sorry, it doesn't transfer here.
Interesting.
Wouldn't that be a bitch?
Seriously. But no, I'm very glad that I took AP Psych. My senior year was also the year that the Twin Towers were struck on 9/11.
Oh,
And
snap.
that was a space that became like a safe haven for us in that class. So
Yeah.
instead of talking just about psychology, we were actually living out, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through, and looking at our textbook and reading through what we were feeling in that moment, basically. So it was like we had our textbook and we had to put that side by side with what was happening in our world at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I remember because I was just 1 year out of high school when that happened. So I was living in a dorm in the process of flunking out of Ferris State University.
Oh man.
And yeah, I remember it was either a Tuesday or a Thursday because I had my first class didn't start until the afternoon, so I was asleep in the morning, and somebody woke me up and was like, "Hey, 2 planes just hit the trade towers." I was like, "What?" And like, "I don't know. I got to go to class. See you later." So that was my introduction to what had just happened.
Man.
Yeah.
yeah, I
think
was
it was a
to
Tuesday.
put it in perspective. I was 7 years out of high school, so
Yeah. Well, that's okay. We're elder millennials, and you're what are you, Gen X?
Gen X, yeah.
Gen X, yeah. Um. All right. So then, right out of school, what did you do? Did you go to school? Did you do creative stuff on the side? Were you involved in creative jobs, areas of study, anything like that?
Well, you didn't ask about my grades.
Oh,
So
yeah, no. Tell me about your grades, and then segue out of
this is what
what
happens
happened
when
after
you
you
have an
graduated.
ADD host.
Hello.
No, I was like a C student. I struggled big time.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I went to community college for 2 years, got a 2-year degree, and then didn't really do much with that, and then started my own lawn care business way back in the day, just cutting grass, and then yeah, I did that for a while, got divorced, got remarried, ended up doing some server jobs. I was a server. I got fired from everyone. Famous Days, not even open anymore. Got fired from there. Got fired from Red Robin.
Can I ask
Really?
what for on some of these, or is it better we don't say?
No, it's fine. So
I've never heard this story.
yeah, I haven't. Some of the stuff you've said too, I haven't heard either. So it's kind of been interesting. Yeah, I was. As Ben knows, I have a really hard work ethic, and I've always had that. Even growing up, I had a paper route when I was 14. Bought my own moped the day I turned 15 for $800 cash, brand spanking new Honda Elite from the dealer and everything. So I've had a big work ethic. So when I got in those server jobs, I was a little old. I was older than a lot of them, and I didn't put up with people not doing their work. And so I just spoke my mind, and you know what that happens, I called one girl. Well, the last one at Red Robin where I got fired, and I actually opened that restaurant when it first opened in Granville. Nolte, I had Nolte that weekend, and I don't know what was going on, but he was sick, and this girl was like, "Yeah, I'll stay for you," and then I did like all the work, like her extra side work and all that other shit. Like there was some deal we worked out. And then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And she's like, oh, never mind. I don't want to do it anymore. And I was like, you fucking bitch. And yeah, you can't say that. Like, you just can't say that. So yeah, I got fucked.
Man.
Yeah. Ben's like, that sounds like Jason.
Totally.
Yeah, I can see that. Driven and speaks his mind. I would say that about you.
Yeah, and has an anger issue that had not been addressed back then. So,
I've heard you say that, and I think that's amazing because we don't really have passionate conversations a lot either, but I've only seen you get kind of like, come on, man, not like mad.
No, I mean it takes quite a bit to like really get me mad. I get irritated. What I struggle with, and Ben can speak to this, is just the way my tone, just the way I talk to people sometimes, and sometimes I don't even realize I'm being a jerk. And so
you have like resting bitch voice.
Yes, that's great.
He sure does.
So anyways, back to my story. So did lawn care and then ended up starting at True Green, God help us all, in 04 to 08. And then I've been with Weed and Feed ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can definitely pick up from that story that you're the kind of guy who, if he doesn't see something immediately going on that he likes, he'll just start it himself, which...
Yeah, I do have an entrepreneur spirit, and that's kind of what's like keyed me up on to this having a production company, just to be like, maybe I can do that in the winter. Maybe that can be my source of income instead of, rideshare. Not that I don't like rideshare, but, it can be a struggle.
Oh, yeah, especially right now.
Yeah.
Well, how about you, Ben? What kind of stuff have you gotten into in the past and leading up to now that kind of highlights your creativity?
Sure.
Oh, God bless you.
COVID-19. No, it's just allergy season. Well, creativity has kind of always been kind of my jam. I think back to elementary school. I did Odyssey of the Mind, if anybody's familiar with that. And, when my peers were doing sports and those types of competitions, I was doing the nerdy Odyssey of the Mind, building things out of balsa wood and putting together cardboard vehicles. And, it was awesome. So creativity has always been kind of my fallback. Like when things are rough, get creative, so that comes to mind. And then, let's see. And then moving forward into college, I haven't spoken much to that yet. My major was in youth ministry, and the youth ministry professor at Cornerstone was all about creativity. In fact, in the year since I graduated, he started a separate program all about creativity. So I don't know if you can major in it or what, but it's become a major focus at the school. And Don,
and that's within the religious studies department?
I'm not sure what it falls under, but Don Perini is the professor that kind of helped me increase my passion for creativity in college. So I did a lot of multimedia stuff, whether it was slideshows or videos, things like that. I worked in the media production area at Cornerstone. This is back in the day when people actually put stuff on CDs and DVDs and whatnot, all before our current setup. So I would spend my time working in the media lab, essentially taking people's projects, putting them onto discs and things like that. And also renting out equipment so they could record, again, pre-smartphones. So that was very much a part of my experience. So creativity has kind of always been my thing.
Sorry, I wanted to just ask you while I'm still thinking about it. All the multimedia stuff that you had done, do you feel like that lends itself pretty well into what you do with podcasting now, or was that kind of a different animal because it was more visual?
No, I think it definitely lends itself well. When I put together posts for Threads, I have experience with visual stuff, and it's pretty easy for me to throw something that looks nice together. In fact, our one sponsor that we have, I put together kind of an overview of Threads podcast and our listeners and stats and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And was really proud of that document that I created, and it helped us get our first sponsor. So, creativity has kind of always been my go-to, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that just to piggyback on that, Ben did a fantastic job with that. I was super impressed with that. I not that I didn't think he could do it, and then I was just shocked when he sent it to me. I'm like, holy crap, I would never have been able to done this. I mean, I could do it, but just to have the thought process of what he did and how he laid it out. I'll have to send it to you, Chris. That's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to see that because, like I said, I'm a pretty big deal now. I've had some downloads in Canada, so I might need to get on top of that kind of stuff soon.
Hashtag international.
Oh, sorry if you couldn't see just now. I almost fell over laughing. Okay. Well, I do want to talk about sponsors, but I want to get to that later because in a linear progression of things, that's kind of one of the last things you need to worry about when you're actually putting a podcast together. So if I don't circle around back to that, remind me at the end.
ADD host.
Yeah, that's right. What were we talking about? One thing I did want to ask you guys too, before we start talking about the podcasts that you do now, if you had never gotten into podcasting, what would you do with all this time that you've put into podcasting? What do you think you would have been doing with it?
Wow.
Reading books.
What was that, Ben? Reading books?
Yeah, I have not. I've not read a book in quite a while, and that's different. I mean, reading was. I always. Let's see. Well, when I was in college, the phrase I kept hearing was "leaders are readers." So reading was definitely something that was important to me, and I've kind of let that go in order to focus on podcasting.
Yeah, I agree. That's a true statement. The leaders are readers. I don't read either. In fact, I have a book from a guy that's a rideshare driver that is fiction, but it's based on some of his real life stuff, and I've only been like halfway through it. It's ridiculous. What is he? Oh, The Wealthy Gardener.
Oh yeah, you just had the guy on the show. Yeah.
So we actually got a couple of books that I haven't read, but anyways, I'm terrible with that. I just fall asleep. I won't take time to read, but I don't know, Chris, what I'd be doing. I'd probably have another hobby.
Or series of hobbies, perhaps.
Say that again. Y'all talked at the same time.
Oh, sorry. I said, or series of hobbies, perhaps.
Yeah. I think that one thing that kind of leaned for me to stop playing the drums, which I still have my set if anyone's listening and wants to buy it. Special price today. Yeah, I don't know. I have really had I have a great, amazing wife, and she has been very tolerant of having the studio in the basement and me spending a lot of time. But I've definitely had some discussions with her about being intentional coming down here and not just like, my man cave and sit on the computer and BS. I try to I've tried a specific nights to go down and pound stuff out. Like Mondays are my night typically to get stuff done. So, but yeah, I don't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably have another hobby and probably loop Ben into it.
Okay. Now I'm going to get techie here, if you don't mind. I want to talk about, for people out there that are going, well, I could make a better podcast than the one this guy's doing. Maybe, but it's not that easy. There's a lot that goes into it. So I remember Jason saying, hey, you should do a podcast. And I was like, okay. I started looking into what you had to do to actually just have one, put one out. And I immediately just shut down. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And Jason was like, fine, you can do it at my house. But if you don't have a Jason in your life, what is like square one? You've got an idea. Now, what do you do to start making that a reality? Like step one is, what do you think, Jason?
Oh man, and this is something that I've been dabbling in a little bit too, is trying to create like a list of things to do, as I've helped a couple people, but haven't really wrote a ton down. But for people that definitely are interested and want a complete low budget, you can do it with your iPhone and iPhone headphones and use Anchor. I mean, Anchor is a podcasting host that I don't super recommend as far as long term, because there's been some rumors that they own your content and blah blah blah. But I think it's great for people to start out. And I know Buzzsprout is a good one for that too. You don't have to pay anything, and Anchor's super cheap too. And it's just like, if you're gonna want to just try and see, because you know our hosting platform is $20 a month, so there's some costs involved with that. But you can start out as little as an iPhone and iPhone headphones. Honestly, the iPhone headphones are one of the best microphones out there. I mean, for far as like low budget, where you didn't have to spend anything. I know I'm not really answering your question, but what was your original?
Well, no, that's probably beyond any kind of like logos or anything that you would use for any kind of marketing purposes, something like that. That was a big sticking point for me. And Ben, you've got your own show too. Do you use a different hosting site for that than you do for Threads?
I do. Currently, I use Buzzsprout just because it's free.
Okay.
And the only downside is after 90 days, your episodes disappear. But it's fine. I don't have a whole lot of episodes, so I'm not terribly worried about that. And I still have the hard copy files on my computer. So
yeah. And I was surprised that they're not, they don't all come from a cookie cutter, and they're just the same thing with a different name. One will give you stats that say what state people came from. Some will say what markets people came from, and some will even tell you like specifically what town people are listening from, right?
Yes. Yep.
And that's all just a matter of how much you want to pay, or what the different sites offer. Am I getting that about right, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, Chris and I went round and round about hosting sites. Not round and round like arguing, but we kind of went back and forth. I mean, I really wanted to use Buzzsprout, and then we looked at the money wise. It was the most expensive one out there to get the amount of record hours that you wanted. Like Chris said, each of them. Some of them have, you get 2 hours a month. Some of them, it's unlimited. And we finally, I think we settled on Podbean for Chris. Wasn't super obsessed with the stats, but wanted more time. And they were actually the most affordable one. But I did like Buzzsprout. I just, for 20, it was going to be like $20 a month. And you got like 3 hours of record time a month. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, you're paying $20. You should have unlimited bandwidth, but that was just my opinion on it. So,
I mean, unless you're going to do super short episodes, but each one that I've done so far has been just over an hour.
Right.
So, I mean, right now, like almost right now at this mark, I would be out of time for the month.
Yeah. And you can get more time, but they would charge you more. And I'm like, if you're on a budget and you don't, I mean, why spend extra if you don't have to? So that's why we kind of settled on Podbean, which is the most affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, but for different shows, you guys, how many different hosting, is that what they're called? Hosting sites?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many different hosting sites do you guys have between the two of you? Because GR Rideshare is
Libsyn.
Mm-hmm. Threads is
Podbean.
I'm Podbean.
Ben is Buzzsprout.
Ben is Buzzsprout.
And then
the other one that you produce, is that what's that one, Jason?
The Dad Up podcast, that's Libsyn.
That's on Libsyn also.
And that's how I presented it. If you want the best stats ever, go with Libsyn. I don't know why they have the advantage, but although Buzzsprout does pretty good too. Buzzsprout was interesting. It would label the actual city, which I really kind of liked. It was kind of just the nerd part of it, like, oh, somebody in like some podunk town in Idaho You know what I mean? Like that
Somebody
would,
in Butte, Montana.
right? Like that would be cool to know that, but I wasn't willing to spend more money just to get that.
Right.
So,
How did you decide on? Oh no, you just said that. Never mind. Never mind.
well, the Lipson, the reason I pushed on, we went on Lipson, they give you the stats for the top 200 radio markets in the country. So, not that we're radio, but that's how they base it on. And
Right.
Grand Rapids is one of the top 200, and we wanted to market our podcast to sponsors in the Grand Rapids area for the rideshare one. So we're like, we need to know our stats in Grand Rapids or Detroit or at least Michigan. Which with Podbean, you got Michigan, but we wanted to go to a sponsor and say, hey, Auto Shop, you know, we get this many downloads in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Do you want a part of this?
Yeah. And if I grow this thing to a point that I can say like, hey, I think I could make a little bit of money or get, whatever from a sponsor, that would probably be what I would bump up to next. But like for now, just trying to grow it, I'm happy seeing just what state people are coming from.
Yeah, and
no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just to throw it out there, you can switch hosts. It can be a little challenging. We switched from Podbean to Lipson, and it was great. It was pretty seamless. I kept my Podbean open for a while. One thing I failed to do, though, and I'll just throw that out there as a mistake, is I forgot to just do a little episode to my Podbean listeners. So maybe Ben can speak of this. I don't really know. Like, Lipson doesn't have their own app, which is super weird. Like, Podbean has their own app. Like, you can listen on the Podbean app to the Threads podcast, Life Unfiltered, and same for GR. But what I didn't do is when I switched, people that were getting the feed just directly from Podbean all of a sudden just shut off. Like, I never talked about it because once I canceled my membership, the feed stops. They're not going to pay. They're not going to spend bandwidth.
So you didn't have that idea ahead of time to go, hey, in 30 days we're going to move.
Yeah, I should have done that, and that was a super fail on my part. So
well, none of us really even thought of that or considered it when we were making the move.
Right. I take the blame because I should have known. I'm the one that made the switch. But yeah, if y'all are going to switch out there, make sure your last episode and always keep your other platform open for a while so everything redirects. But if you're on Podbean, we had, I don't know, 40 or 50 followers on Podbean for GR, and I just left them in the lurch. I mean, I'm sure if they really wanted to listen, they could find it again. But that was kind of a dumb move on my part.
So when it comes to, what was I going to say? How was I going to say that? With the different, forget it. Okay. Did you guys have any help? Like I say that you guys collectively, and especially Jason, when we're in the studio together and he's saying, you don't do this, do that. Did you guys have an early mentor that kind of said, hey, try doing this way? Or was it all trial and error?
It was a lot of trial and error to start, for sure, and still is to this day. I mean, we just learned by doing. But we did have a couple of people that Jason knew, and then I had a guy that I knew. And so we reached out to both of them, and they're both audio engineers of some sort. So they were able to give mainly Jason some tips and tricks, and Jason's been really good about passing those along. So because again, the studio's at his house,
right?
So
yeah, I think those guys helped on the audio portion, and that's another sidebar. If you're going to create a podcast, the number one thing that I turn a podcast off for is shitty audio. And just and maybe Chris on the intro, you should tell people that for COVID-19, we're all remote, so the audio is like I've been trying to tell people that it's not been the greatest. But
I didn't say that on my last one, but when I was putting it out on social media, I let everybody know this is the first time in the quarantine era, and we're all doing it from home.
Yeah. So, but that's the number one thing that I'll turn a podcast off is audio. And so, like I said, Ben had a guy from his church I reached out to. So that was the struggle. Now, as far as like podcasting, we did not have a mentor. It was all trial and error. And there's a ton of way to skin a cat. That's the saying that they say. I don't know why they say it. That's terrible because who would skin a cat? Let's say like
or shoot two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't shoot stones either. Like all these dumb sayings in 2020 don't work. But that's why I told Chris, I was like, hey Chris, there's many ways you can do this. This is how I do it. This is how I think it's the best, but you can do many different ways. So what was the original question? Speaking of ADD.
Mentor.
Oh, mentor. Yeah. So we didn't. And one thing
we did Facebook.
What's that?
We had Facebook. Like there were several groups.
Yeah. The podcast movement community is great. There's not a lot of snark on there. It's so kind of enlightening to be in a group that people aren't a-holes. There is on occasion, but I try to be helpful. Like, what can I do to help? This is, I've messaged people from that group and say, I have like this new board that we have is about 6 months old forever. I mean, not just ours is 6 months old, but since it's been out. And so like I messaged somebody, I'm like, hey, I'll help you as much as I can. So, but nobody specifically. So, but I enjoy helping people. Jesper, one of the hosts on the Rideshare podcast, says you need to stop helping people for free. I'm like, yes,
that's true.
It's time to create a business.
Yeah, once you become good enough at it, it's kind of as nice as it is to help people. It's worth something to be able to do that too.
I can basically save somebody the 6 months that Ben and I, because the second he started hosting, him and I were like, okay, we need to do this together. So it wasn't just me. I bounced a ton of stuff off Ben too, and he gave me ideas. But Ben and I struggled for 6 months. I can save you all those 6 months of struggle within like 30 minutes of speaking with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
100%. Because Ben, when I was trying to first get everything set up, like, and I guess step 2 would be once you've got a podcast hosting site, is then to go and set up accounts with all the other mediums. When Jason said, okay, you're on Podbean, that's great. Now we have to actually go and establish the show on Apple Podcasts, on Google. He was saying, watch this. This took me like 10 hours to figure all this out, and we're going to get it done in 45 minutes.
Yep.
So true.
Yeah, and that was something I just thought that once you signed up for Podbean, you just said, publish this episode, and it just sent it everywhere immediately for you. I don't know, do any of the hosting sites do that, or do you have to kind of manually set that up?
Buzzsprout makes it a lot easier. So you can just, with a few clicks of the mouse, you can submit everything to Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, all that.
I have to disagree a little bit. You can't just do that with Apple. Apple is tricky. It doesn't matter what hosting site you have to have a Podcast Connect account. But Buzzsprout, as far as the host that we've all dealt with, has been the easiest. It's not been. I think Podbean has added like Spotify and stuff like that. But I wish all those hostings would do, except Apple. They're a bunch of pricks. You gotta you gotta jump through a couple more hoops, and I get it. But
they can afford to be, though, because I mean, my show has way less downloads than your guys' shows, but it's just about like 49% of all my downloads come from Apple. Yeah. I don't know if it's the similar with you guys.
Yeah.
It's definitely heavy. I don't know if it's, to that point, but
yeah, it's Apple is the king of podcasting. So you definitely have to get, you definitely have to get on Apple. If you don't get on Apple and you want to grow your show, then
you're doing it wrong.
Good luck.
Yeah. And Apple, I had a weird experience with Apple that even made Jason go,
I don't know, man.
What happened? Because it was the cover art for the show, the thumbnail art. I had tried to convert it from a JPEG to a PNG or vice versa, but like the conversion got messed up, so it said PNG when it was actually a JPEG.
No.
So all of the other places were like, okay, that's fine. And then Apple kicks it back and goes, we can't accept your podcast. It could be for one of these reasons. And then it started listing things like racial slurs, or not, incentivizing violence, some stuff like that. I was like, wait a minute, my show doesn't do any of that. It's about creative people. So then, after about a week, finally somebody emailed me back after I had reached out, and they're like, oh, it's because this file has mislabeled the picture.
Like, how would you even ever know that? Like, you could have gone months with not figuring it out.
That's crazy.
So to go back on the stats for Apple, for us, it's 34% Apple Podcasts, 10% Castbox, 8% Podbean app, and 7% Chrome. That's the top 4.
Okay.
That's on Threads. So
really? I show 41% Apple, 10% Watch OS.
Hey,
11% Spotify.
You're doing just March. You didn't change it to the last 24 months.
Oh, you're so smart.
Yeah, I am so smart.
You were both right.
We are both right.
It's communication is a beautiful thing.
Hey, Chris, don't be jealous. We have 4 downloads in Russia, so suck it. I'm hoping to get a download in Greenland, but that's been just nothing.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll become another state soon. I don't know. Was that Greenland that Trump wanted to buy?
I don't know.
I can't remember. And it has nothing to do with podcasting. But it was shiny and I got distracted. Okay. So assuming somebody has kind of got their stuff together, they've got art, they've got a hosting site, and then they've got all these different outlets lined up, then talk just real quick gear. I can see both of you guys have the same headphones. Do you guys have the same mics too at your different locations?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the Behringer. It's a $20 mic. I've gone round and round with Ben a little bit. We want to upgrade our mics, but the one I want is $400.
Woo!
Yeah, and you don't need that. Is it going to improve the audio? Oh, hell yeah. Is it going to be dramatic? No. There are some tools out there that you can improve your audio with. One site called Alphonic has been a lifesaver for us.
Mm-hmm.
You get 2 hours free a month per email address.
Say that one again.
Alphonic.
How do you spell that?
Go, Ben.
AU. So like audio. AU and then phonic.
Okay.
PHONIC.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go ahead with.
No, it's just it automatic levels stuff out. It reduces hum. It sets your podcast. And Chris, I send your copy with this already done. So it sets it to 16 LUFS. I don't know what LUFS stand for. It's LUFS, but that's the podcasting standard for level of sound, so that when you're listening it to in your car or in your headphones, it's the same level every time. And there's podcasts I listen to that I'm like, every frickin' episode I have to adjust the volume.
Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it kills me because I think it's the similar problem on Netflix. Have you guys ever watched a movie on Netflix and the volume of the voices is right here, and then all of a sudden the music comes on and it's and it like blows your ears right off your head?
In fact, we started watching Megan and I, because we have Disney Plus, the Marvel comic series, starting from the beginning going through, and we watched the first one, which is Captain America, and 100% Chris, the voices were so quiet. I was adjusting the volume. Then there would be a fight scene. I'm like, good Lord. So,
and apparently, I will have to probably end up doing this interview remotely now, but I was going to have somebody in studio this summer who works in the movie industry, and he said it's not even hard to fix it. It's just a matter of like them not wanting to go back and redo it for Netflix.
Okay, well, you're spending $1 billion on the film. I mean, what are we doing here?
So I don't know. I'm gonna make a note to ask him about that too, because that kills me when the audio levels are just crazy off like that. Okay, so you can get a microphone, $20.
Yeah. And then you can use
or even just do it into your phone. But if you wanted to have a little bit more of a pro style setup like you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a ton of money in it. I mean, Ben, what did that mixer cost that you have? I know I ended up Honestly, the mixer you have, I paid for out of pocket, and like literally no one paid for it but me. It's a long story, but anyways, what is that? Like $120?
Something like that, yeah.
So it's not super expensive. For less than $200, you can be in business and have a little bit better audio.
That's not bad.
I'm not going to try to get in the weeds too much, but the box that we have, or the mixer we have now, is $400. It actually records per channel, which can be nice because especially if someone's audio and you're doing it remotely is super shitty, you can kind of just clean up theirs a little bit instead of applying that feature or that editing to everyone. So, the mixer that Ben has is just a one channel. It's like everyone that's on it, even though he can plug 4 people in, they're all on one channel, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I think that makes sense, but I don't have a mixer, so I'm just going to take your word for it.
I know. I'm trying not to get too far in the weeds of like, I don't give a shit if your listeners are listening. I don't care.
No, because I'm sure that there are some people that go, yeah, I'm with Chris. I don't know what he's talking about, but some people will go, oh yeah. There's a lot of techie. I don't want to say nerds, but nerds in a good way.
Yeah.
Nerds like they're passionate about it. Nerds.
Right.
I love nerds. Actually, now I'm thinking about the candy. So, okay, mic, mixers, headphones. I've got, a set of ear-covering headphones that have a mic built in, but headphones, have you guys noticed, like, a huge difference? Because you guys have got these black and red-trimmed headphones. What are those?
They were an Amazon special.
Really?
And we, what are they, MPOW? Some, knockoff brand, but they work really well. And they have Bluetooth. So if you're not podcasting, you can use them to just listen to music or whatever. They're inexpensive, but they have high quality audio. So
I was going to ask you if they make them specifically for people that do things in, not necessarily podcasting, but like audiovisual realm, or are they like game headphones?
They're just general headphones. They do make specific ones. Sony and Audio Technica Audio. I don't know. But I don't think headphones are that big of a deal. Just get ones that are completely enclosed. I know they have headphones that you can kind of hear out the back a little bit. And so, speaking of my ear itches. Yeah, and so, $40 is what we paid for them. I don't use them other than podcasting, but yeah, like Ben said, they are Bluetooth, and they're really good if you listen on your phone to music. They're really bassy and stuff like that. So, so yeah, I want to go back to the mics real quick.
Yeah.
There's a condenser mic and a dynamic mic. The ones we use are condensers, and are probably have a better. I don't know. I disagree a little bit, but have more of a rich sound. But you have to have a good environment for a condenser mic. So a dynamic mic, you really got to get right up on the mic really close, but it also reduces the sound that's around it, so it doesn't pick that up. These condenser mics, like, I don't know if you guys heard my dog bark earlier. Yeah, but it would pick that up if I didn't have my door closed. It probably would pick that up. So just throwing that out there. I want to get into some dynamic mics, but it's everyone's opinion. If you have a room, which I have a really good room, I have carpet down here. I have a very low ceiling, so it's not very echoey at all. But if you listen to the GR, the first one I did and the second one that Ben and I did, we did in this stupid like ghetto in between laundry room and whatever, a living space, and it was terrible. Yeah, so back to the headphones. Simple headphones are fine. You can use earbuds.
Yeah. Well, even like Bill Burr's podcast, somebody told me when he first started it, he just had a phone and some.
Yeah, you can do all that. Like it's all what you want to do. I wanted to create a more studio atmosphere, but hell, dude, you can do it on your iPhone, and you can have a podcast up on Anchor in 10 minutes. You could do a 5-minute podcast, and 5 minutes later, you could have it live. So there's definitely simpler ways to do it and more complicated ways to do it. But, the reason we kind of upgraded the board, it has, I can play music, I can play drops, write live and stuff. I can play our intro. And so it's definitely, like Ben and I have said, it's caused more challenges, but in the long run, it's worth it. So,
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, besides a mic, mixer, headphones, that's pretty much everything you need, at least to start, right?
Yeah.
Well, computer helps. But as far as like once you've got it, you've started recording stuff, you're putting it out there. Ben, do you have advice for people for marketing? Like, obviously, you need to be on social media, but like, what do you guys do to try to stand out from the crowd, marketing wise?
Yeah, we use Hootsuite is what the platform is called. And the nice thing about that is it posts to multiple social media channels at once. So instead of having to go in and create posts on Facebook and then go create posts on LinkedIn and then not LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram and all these other ones, Hootsuite does it all at once. So that's definitely an advantage because it does take time to create content, and it also takes a lot of creative energy, obviously. So to have a place like Hootsuite where you can go and market it and put it up to multiple platforms is really helpful.
Yeah. And I got to say on that, the reason that is important, and Jason has been very helpful in this. I hope you realize that I appreciate all the help when you send something and go, hey, Dick, you totally messed up the Facebook post. You got to put this, and this in there.
I don't say Dick.
No, that's probably nicer than what you would say. But no, no, like if you just try to post everything from like Facebook and like on my website, I can post something and just like click buttons and it'll automatically put it on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for me. But then like the links don't always show up, or like you'll have the @ for their Instagram and it pops up on there, but then it doesn't make sense when it crosses over to something else. All these just little quirky techie differences between the different platforms.
Yeah, Hootsuite does a pretty good job of, specific. It basically sends it out. I think what issue you're having on Instagram is you're using your Instagram and like you're posting once on Instagram and then asking it to post to Facebook, and then they're even though they're the same company or they're owned by the same company, they don't quite communicate well. But that's where Hootsuite drops in, because it will tell you what parameters or things you need specific for each account. Like Instagram, obviously the kind of picture. Sometimes I'll post a picture and I'll be like, "Oh, son of a bitch!" It'll edit it for you. You can go in there, it'll say edit it, and you can try to edit it. And so that's where Hootsuite comes in. It can be a little finicky with links too. I know Ben and I have both struggled on that. I prefer not to use Hootsuite when I'm posting an episode because I have not been a huge fan of that. But if we're just posting a picture, it's great, or a link in regards to, whatever we're talking about, some news article. It seems to be okay, but for some reason, I don't know, the podcast, I don't know. I just do it individually when we're like posting an episode.
Yeah.
And then the marketing part of it. I mean, we don't really. I mean, Ben and I spend $50 a month in advertising. Right now, we actually have billboards around Grand Rapids. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I have kids, so I don't leave the house.
Speaking of that, Ben, we should probably shut that shit down until everyone goes back to work.
Right? Nobody's going to be driving.
Let's go back to Zane for the 50 for the next month. I think we need to do that. But as far as like I talked to at the beginning of the podcast, the Facebook groups, make sure you have your niche. If you're a podcast about parenting, you got your niche, right? You can find. I mean, a lot of groups don't let you post links, but you can connect with people. But as far as budget for marketing, your best free way to do it is get on other people's podcasts.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
I would say that's the cheapest, best way to grow your show is get on other people's podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah. I need to. Well, how have you guys in the past? Because I know that there's ways that you can do it, paid and otherwise, to get on people's podcasts. What would you recommend to somebody if somebody said, "Hey, man, how do I do this?" Just like Google podcasts in this area and then reach out, or
There's online directories that you can find via Google and anything else. We used one, and my initial question was, are these people expecting some form of compensation? And nobody brought it up. So everybody that we've interviewed on our show has been free. And we've had some really good ones, and we've had some that are just kind of like, yeah, well, that was okay. So it's definitely a mixed bag, but there are definitely people out there who want to be on your show, and they tend to make their rounds on many different podcasts. For example, John Saforic, that wrote The Wealthy Gardener, he has a whole page on his website highlighting the podcasts that he's been a guest on. So there are absolutely tons and tons of guests that want to be a part of podcasts, and they're willing to do it at no cost.
Just caveat, or that's not the right word, to jump to sidle on with Ben. We used podcastguest.com, and Ben, I actually found this out since I've registered GR and Dad Up. It actually specifically says if anyone asks for money, it's not allowed through podcastguest.com, and you're supposed to report them if they do. So it's definitely a free thing. So yeah, I would recommend people, if you want, guests on your show, that's the way to do it. And we can do it the other way. We just haven't. There are people where we can go in the directory and say, I want to be on your show. And Ben and I just haven't done that. We were just looking for a way to increase content and not just have us talk all the time.
right?
If one of us gets sick or, COVID-19, and we can just throw in we recorded, Ben, what did we record? Like
close to 30.
Yeah. Interviews. So we've got that kind of spread out throughout the year. So, yep.
Yeah. And that's, I didn't think about that. And that's a big tip that both of you guys have given me, which up till now, I'm not doing great at. But recording a lot and then just releasing them over time, because, not everybody's Joe Rogan and has every amazing person just banging on their door, hey, let me in and I'll record a show every day. So yeah, I've heard that from you guys and from the online podcast movement group. Just record as many as you can, even if it means like giving up one day out of the month, just then you don't have to do anything again for, a while. Are there any other tips, tricks, things that you guys kind of found out the hard way that are on the top of your head that you want to throw out there?
Well, one of the big things you didn't bring up is editing. That's a huge part of podcasting, and it's the hardest part of podcasting. We use Audacity, which is free. It's a free download right now on Mac. It's a little tricky. The new Mac update broke Audacity, and it's open source, and so no one does it. Whoever's working on it does it. I don't know if they do it for free or donations or what it is. But it's for Windows and Mac, and there's a couple of ways you can do editing. I'm going to let Ben touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I have really come to enjoy editing, and for the majority of our episodes, probably up until episode 60, Jason and I just alternated who would edit. We would take turns, but when I stepped away from the GR Rideshare podcast, I had some time freed up, and I started getting into the weeds on editing and really looking into things like noise gate and full transparency. Sometimes I have a nose whistle. I have allergies, and generally it's the new soundboard that Jason has in his studio. It's so high quality that it picks up that noise from my nose and it's so obnoxious. But anyway, so that was what really kind of stirred the pot for me, is how can I fix this without making the rest of the audio sound like trash? So I would just spend hours, literal hours, just getting into the nitty gritty of it, looking at the various decibel graph levels, looking at the spectrogram and all these other nerdy things about audio, and just loved it. So recently I just told Jason, until further notice, I'll just plan on editing. I've kind of found a rhythm and, found some tricks to kind of help the process along. And to me, it's fun. Yes, it takes a lot of time. I would say for our episodes of Threads, I usually put at least 2 hours into editing for each episode, sometimes more, sometimes less, but lately it's been more, especially with remote recordings, having several different files to work with and trying to find the one that kind of sounds the best. There's so many little things that go into the editing process that really can consume your time, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, some of that time spent is waiting for things to process. So don't think that.
I mean, for you.
Shut up. I don't have a lot of RAM in my computer, but anyways, that's for another day. But there's people that painstakingly take the ums out, take the pauses out, take the whatever out. I will actually, on my intros, I take the ums out, and if I have a long pause, I will take them out because it's like 2 minutes. But can you imagine this podcast? We're at an hour and 14 minutes. If we took every out and every long pause, I mean, that would take you 2 hours alone. And I'm not willing to spend the time. And we don't want to overproduce our things, because I like listening to podcasts where, I mean, I know Bill Burr gets a bad rap with that because he's yelling at his kids sometimes and everything. I don't listen to his podcast, but I've heard people say that. But
I've heard it before where he's like, what? Sorry, my kid needs something.
Yeah, and I'm kind of okay with that. I mean, not to an extent where it's happening every 10 minutes of the podcast, but if a dog barks or a cat jumps up in front of the camera, that's funny shit. Like, I enjoy that. And so I have, listen to podcasts where they're too NPR-ish, and not that they do a great job, but I mean, you can hear.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, it's super produced.
I do like NPR too,
And then there's times where I wish, if you've ever listened to the Dad Up podcast, he goes, "We'll be back," and he, plays a little jingle down and then a little jingle back in, and we don't do that either. But I kind of do like that a little bit. So it's kind of what you want to do. I will tell you, if you edit all that stuff out, you're 5 or 6 hours of editing.
Easily.
And your show is probably a lot shorter too.
Yeah. Well, if you say a lot or so or interesting, all those words to kind of carry over. That's one word I've tried to work on is stop saying so. Just saying what it is. Like,
Yeah, because I like it when you do it, though, because then you go a little bit Mickey Mouse. You go, so.
Oh, I haven't got excited on this podcast, but if I start laughing and like someone's made me laugh and I start talking or get excited, it goes super Mickey Mouse. For this deep voice, it goes real high.
Well, I think the first time you and I ever hung out was, did you put together that street party?
Yes.
Yeah. That neighborhood street party. And we were hanging out and somebody put on, I can't remember what song it was. It was some 80s metal song. And I was like, hey. And you're like, you like that song too?
We're best friends forever.
Exactly what voice you're talking about.
That's great. So that's Ben and I's piece about the editing. It is super important. I would use Audacity. It's free. We've dabbled in other stuff. There's obviously expensive programs. Reaper is coming up as a really good alternative to Audacity. It's $60. I mean, it's super cheap, but man, I've downloaded it and started playing around with it, and it is, it's a big learning curve. So,
yeah. Well, and that seems like the thing to me I'm so glad that I know you guys, because you guys have all this experience, and then Jason does the the simple cutting. We don't do too much editing besides like merging the intro into the show. But yeah, I can only imagine that once you get started on that, it's just a rabbit hole, and you're like, oh, you can do this and that and this, and then you can buy that to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends how picky you want to be. It's your editing can be easier if you set up your equipment correctly. Your editing can be easier.
What do you mean?
Well, there's people that record in a closet. You know what I mean? Like, that's a great place to do it because it's got good sound, and you're not going to have to do a lot of processing on your editing because the sound ain't bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
So it all depends. I mean, honestly, a closet with a bunch of clothes around you is the best place to record.
Huh. I thought you were going to make a joke about people who have a shitty setup or something.
No. I mean, if we didn't live stream our stuff and I didn't have this equipment set up, there's people that put blankets up all around their room. They hang them on the wall. I mean, anything to deaden the sound is there is no shame in your game. Most people, like, we concentrate on the live stream for GR because we have a lot of interaction, but 95% of the people listen to audio only.
Yeah.
So,
have you guys thought about changing anything that you do with the video streaming, since, like you said, so much of it is just audio driven, or do you like the way that it is now, and that's just kind of something that you've got for like the more intimate crowd?
In regards to GR or Threads?
Well, I guess either, really, because, well, you had said about 95% of people for GR rideshare listen rather than watch, right?
I mean, I'm throwing that number out there. I haven't, it's hard to look it up.
Do the stats on that change that much between the shows?
Facebook doesn't really give you. I mean, you could spend some time digging in, but we haven't really dug in. I noticed with Threads that it's increasing a little bit as far as the live stream goes. Don't you think, Ben? You seem to have more interaction on the live stream.
Yeah, it's not gonna lie, the people that are interacting are our friends and family, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy. It's two different animals. The rideshare one, I actually don't do anything with comments because I get too distracted. So I'm doing so much that I've told everyone else, like, I'm done. I can't do. I enjoy it. I love looking at the feedback and laughing.
Yeah,
but I can't. But we get a lot of questions on, and we'll get new listeners on there. So it's a good way for us to market ourselves too. And again, talking about rideshare groups, I share the live stream in about 40 different Facebook groups, and so every episode we pick up a new listener. But like with Threads, like, we share it on our personal pages, but it's really tough to, like, where do we share Threads without looking spammy? And I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah. It is. But what I have noticed is that our friends and family will engage and comment, and then their friends and family will see that on Facebook, and then they'll be like, what's going on over there? And then they'll end up joining. So, and then another thing that happens is, when we have guests on the show, they, of course, bring with them their own audience. And we've seen it a number of times where our guest's audience sticks around and continues to listen to Threads, even though that guest isn't on the show regularly.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you do a live stream, to ask your people that are watching to share it on their Facebook page. And right now is the time to do live streams. Like, our numbers are going down for listening to podcasts because people aren't commuting, which is fine. It's like, whatever. But if you're doing a live stream, or you haven't started a live stream and on your podcast, now is the time to do it. I mean, obviously you got to do it remotely or whatever. But if you do it by yourself, or maybe just with one other person, live streaming is the way to go, because people are bored as hell, man. They may not stay along, but at least they are like, oh, that was kind of cool, and then maybe they'll download it later.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I'm gonna ask you guys maybe one more quick round of questions, and then I'll let you go, because
I gotta pee. Yeah.
And this has been a long one. So the last thing I want to talk about is because this is the area where well, I don't have a live stream either yet. But the other area where I feel like I'm lacking is really reaching out and becoming part of a podcast community. Like I'm on that podcast movement, but I feel like I have almost nothing to add. And the one time when I did try to help somebody, Jason's like, "You haven't even recorded an episode yet."
Jason's kind of a dick.
Yeah, I had to jump in there and throw his ass right under the bus.
Yeah, somebody was asking about soundproofing. I just Googled it and was like, "Here you go."
Did you comment on the thread and say?
Well, nobody knows him. It's not like it's like his friends are seeing that. It's there's like 30,000 people in that Facebook group. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
I know I had to get after him.
So yeah, that's something I would say though, like kind of in closing and homework for myself as well, is use social media not just as a place to like put up a thing that says I did an episode, but to actually like become a community and get better at what you do and learn things. Like right now, I learn 98% of the things that I know, which still isn't much, from Jason and from you, Ben, because well, let's see. Now I've been on my own show more times than I've been on your show.
Hey.
Now with this episode. So half of my podcasting experience comes from being a guest on your show. So thanks for that. But yeah, are there certain social media platforms that are better than others, or certain ways to like kind of filter through the different podcast communities to find one that, well, for you guys that you liked?
As far as engaging with people on social media, is that kind of what you're getting after?
Like
well,
marketing?
Specifically within a podcasting community, but I guess also, yeah, as reaching out for the show too.
Yeah. One thing that I've learned is on Facebook, there are two different platforms that you can have for your podcast. You can have a page, which is where you would promote the page and treat it like a business. And you can also have a group. Jason and I are both in a group. It's basically a fan club for another podcast. And sometimes I wish that we had something like that for Threads, something where our listeners could all gather and talk about things, not necessarily about Threads, but, in that group, people just post a lot of funny memes and things that are in line with the humor of the Eric Zane Show podcast. And it's hilarious. And there's definitely a community formed around the podcast, and things get talked about in that group. And it's really cool to see. So I guess if I could do anything different, I would maybe focus more on creating a Threads group where listeners could just have a community amongst themselves. But there's definitely a need, and you need to have the page too, because that's how people are going to find you.
Yeah, as far as the marketing part, yeah, I do miss the group, but the pages can get out of control. The one that Ben is talking about specifically started to have a post approved because it was getting too political. And remember, when those people are talking, they're talking for Zane, and it was getting nasty. And like if someone went to search for Zane's show and found some of those posts, ooh, shit, I'd be like, I don't know if I want to be part of this guy. So you kind of lose control when you do it that group. Now, obviously, Threads wouldn't be like that because we're not a podcast that just is zany, you know what I mean? Which is fine. I mean, I would love to do one like that. I'd love to swear every other word, the F word. But you obviously have to have a page too. You have to be able to promote your stuff and you're in control of it. You're moderating it and things like that. So to go back to answer your question about community, as far as finding resources, I use Reddit. Reddit has a lot of great podcasting things, and Reddit is moderated amazingly. You can't slip one past the goalie for promotion. I mean, they have bots that can get that shit. So it's kind of nice if you're looking just to build or to learn about stuff. I can send you the links to that if you want to put it in the show notes. But there's a couple that I follow that are great. They're super helpful.
I don't think I'll be able to put every link that we've talked about in the show notes, because then the show notes would be like a novella. But yeah, definitely give me the important ones. I'll share those. Well, geez, I'm just about out of questions. Yeah. And one thing I will say too, for anybody who's listening and thinking about starting a podcast, it's not a bad idea to just have like some questions written down on a piece of paper, so then when you're like, then you've got them in front of you. The last podcast that I did was the one that Jason was like, so you've got a lot of verbal crutches, like and so. And that show was particularly bad because we were doing it remotely like this on the internet. And I had some notes that I had typed that I wanted to and I had sections of the book and quotes, and I was going to talk about all these things. And then the computer started getting kind of weird. I was like, I better click out of everything else. And then I was trying to remember what questions I had and what things I had highlighted. And I was doing a lot of, just have kind of an outline, at least, of what you want to talk about is what I would suggest. Like, not even detailed questions, but just some things to where if you're like, where should I go next? I can talk about this.
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of personality you are. I know, Chris, we joked about the ADD, but he's a creative, a little bit of ADD, and that can be a struggle.
A lot of ADD.
You know, what Ben and I have, we've done so many of these, and I think we've, especially on the podcast guests, we got to the point is if you're paying attention to the guest, you should be able to create a question in your head. We stopped using we had a spreadsheet of standard questions, and we just kind of stopped using it because I'm like, they sound so generic in those kind of things. So why, if you're listening to what your guest says and intently listening, you can come up with your questions, but it takes practice. So
I was going to say, I was listening, and sometimes I was still having trouble.
Right.
But,
so a good outline is always good to have. That is very good advice.
Yeah. Or at least until you've done twice as many of your own episodes as you've guested on somebody else's.
Right. And you also don't know if your guest is just a dullard. I mean, if you end up getting somebody, and Ben and I did get some dullards. It's like, oh my, like him and I were messaging back and forth. I'm like, I'm struggling. I got nothing, So, I mean, it's good to have some of those questions just on the ready if you need to.
Yeah. And it's a good experience too to struggle in anything.
Yep.
Just makes you that much more ready the next time.
Yep. Live and learn.
So, and that might be a good place to try to wrap this thing up too. You're going to fail at things, whether it's a podcast or something creative or, being in a relationship with somebody. Don't look at failure as, I screwed up. Look at it as, okay, well, this is a place where I can learn and get better.
Yep.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
What was that? What were you laughing about?
Brushed against my microphone.
Oh.
And that's so true. I don't know. I don't want to come across as if we are the super polished answer to podcasting, because we're not. We are learning everything as we go. And I do stupid shit all the time. Like the other night when Jason and I did our show, I had a green screen behind me and it was failing. So I decided to take it down. But I didn't mute my microphone. So it totally.
Oh my God. It was like I was just going to bang on the mic thing, but it would ruin your podcast, Chris. But not just once, just like he fell down the stairs. I was like, oh my gosh, you can mute your remote. You can mute your own mic.
Yeah. And it was hilarious because one of our listeners was like, are you taking a poop? Like, what's going on? It was so bad. So just piggybacking off of what you were saying, Chris, just get started. You're going to fail. Yes. It's okay. You're going to fail. You're going to pick yourself back up, and you're going to keep going, and you're going to keep learning. We learn by failing. And, that's the thing about failure is if you learn from it, it's really not a failure at all.
Right.
100%. Yep.
A failure is only a failure if you keep repeating it. Something to that effect. Can't remember the quote.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, Jason Tieri and Ben Kraker.
Hey, there you go.
Did I say both names right?
You did.
Yes. I'm teary-eyed. See what I did there?
Yes. Well, Jason, Ben, thank you for all the help you've given me, having me on your show and promoting my show on yours, and for coming on and talking the ins and outs of podcasting. And like I said, I appreciate what you guys do. If it feels weird being put on a pedestal, like these are the experts, I'm not trying to do that. But like you guys have definitely done enough and have enough experience that you could help out poor suckers like me.
Yeah, I just want to say if anyone's listening that wants some help, feel free. You can email Chris and he can forward it to me or whatever. I'm happy to do it. I enjoy it. I thrive on it. I could talk podcasting for 6 hours. I'm not as obsessed as Ben is, but that's okay. Everyone has their thing, and in the last couple of years, it's been podcasting. So I definitely am able to help and want to help if anyone needs it. So, and thanks for having us on, Chris. This has been fun.
Yeah, this has been
Thank you guys.
It's always fun to be a guest on somebody else's.
Yes.
Right? Take some of the pressure off.
Yes, I love that. It's my favorite.
All right. Well, everybody, check out Threads podcast, Life Unfiltered, wherever you get podcasts. Check out GR Rideshare Adventures and The Root of All Ben. And you know what? I'm just going to throw it out there because they record with Jason out of the same studio when we're in the studio. Listen to the Dad Up podcast. Am I missing any?
Nope, I think you got it.
That's everybody's?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
And this is Creative Ops. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.